Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another episode of How You Getting Effed, and also how Singaporeans accidentally got themselves out of being effed recently. I'm your host, Khor Lumpur, and in today's episode, we're not just covering one topic, we're covering two topics. Why? Because we can't talk about one thing without talking about the other. The first thing that I wanted to talk about is a more local topic of the Malaysian VEP car sticker, which was something that was mandated for all cars crossing from Singapore across the border into Malaysia. It was meant to come into effect yesterday on the 1st of October, and it has now been postponed to an unspecified date in the future, which hopefully we'll never see. The second topic that relates to this is this whole give up attitude that I see across the world in many countries that I've lived in, but it's particularly bad in Malaysia and Singapore. So what do I mean by give up attitude? You would probably better know this as I'm just one person, I can't make any change by myself, and whenever something is introduced that's not to my liking, I don't agree with it, I don't like it, but everyone else in society is just gonna follow that law, follow that rule, and I'm gonna have to do it anyway, so I might as well do it because no one else is gonna put up a struggle, and I don't like it, I don't agree with it, but what can I do struggling as a single person? And this is what I like to call the large-scale social bystander effect. The bystander effect is what happens when for example, you have a traffic accident and some guy hits a motorcycle. The guy from the motorcycle is now on the ground and he's injured, and everyone's just looking, but no one's calling emergency services because they're all expecting someone else to do it. They're all looking at the tragedy that's happening right in front of their eyes, but they're like, oh, well, someone else is gonna call the EMS. I don't want to be a duplicate phone call, or someone else is gonna do it. I should just go on my way because I have to go to work, I have to go to school, I have some place to be that's more important than stopping for this traffic accident. And what happens as a result of this bystander effect is quite frequently no one calls emergency services until it's way too late or way too much time has passed, and this is not a good thing. And you're just all diffusing your responsibility and hoping someone else will do whatever it is that you're thinking about, and no one ends up doing it. And this attitude is particularly bad among people in Singapore and also a lot of Malaysian Chinese people. I have nothing against Singaporeans or Malaysian Chinese. I love you guys. But sometimes you gotta grow a backbone and start standing up for yourself, because otherwise there's gonna be no one else left to stand up with you. The day that something gets introduced and you don't like it, you don't agree with it, you don't want to allow it, but there's no one else. There's actually no one else now. So the whole reason why the Malaysian VEP, which is the Vehicle Entry Permit, if I'm not mistaken, that's what it stands for, is a bad thing is because they are mandating this little sticker that you have to paste on your headlight or your windscreen of your car that has a little RFID in it. The purpose of that RFID is so that you can cross from Singapore to Malaysia, and the Malaysian authorities can now track your entry of your vehicle. They're quoting a lot of things related to safety, such as preventing Singaporean cars from being illegally smuggled into Malaysia and staying there forever. In Singapore, there's a 10-year limit on most cars before you have to renew the license on your vehicle to use it for another 10 years, while in Malaysia, you can use your car as long as you want to. So the tendency is once those vehicles in Singapore get used to their 10 years and people don't want to renew their license, they move those cars into Malaysia, and their car spends the rest of their life in Malaysia. Of course, it's not such a really common thing, but it's also not an unheard of thing either. So they're quoting safety as a reason that they need to track your vehicle entering the country. But the real reason is probably the more obvious one, and I believe they've said the quiet part out loud as well. They want to fine Singaporean drivers as they exit the country. So people rack up fines in Malaysia driving their Singaporean vehicle, and they exit the country without paying any fines and without any implications. Now, the thing you have to understand if you're not from this region is that in Malaysia, it's a little bit of a wild west. There's a crap ton of Malaysian vehicles who also break the law. They speed, they get into traffic accidents, hit and runs, they do all sorts of funky shit. They park illegally, whatever. Most of those people don't really pay their fines. And the reason why that is a long-standing culture of no one really enforces many rules unless they feel like it or unless you offended the wrong person. And that is the day that you would probably have to pay those fines. But until that day comes, you're all good. So this is really a revenue generating exercise. And on top of that, this whole VEP tag is really a stupid idea. The reason why that is because there is already a tag system for the existing toll booths in Malaysia, which Malaysian cars use, but Singaporean cars will have to get a separate tag that looks the same but doesn't perform the same functions. You get to have this tag just for entering the country, and if you want to pay for the toll, you have to get probably another tag or use your touch and go, which is a card system that kind of deducts the amount off your prepaid card at the toll booths. So it's pretty clear that someone's making money off of this because instead of integrating both those things together, they're now having a separate thing for border entry and a separate thing for payments at the parking lots and the toll booths. Now, in general, this whole thing is a shitty idea because it is a form of surveillance. That is how they will track your vehicle wherever it goes, even past the border. And that opens up a lot of doors for a police state in the future, which we've already seen in places like London with the whole ULEZ system, where they're banning certain vehicles that do not meet certain emission standards from entering the inner city part of London. This is a whole nother topic that I can talk about in length, but let's get to why this mandate that was supposed to come into effect on the 1st of October, which was yesterday, has now been postponed. What happened was a typical Malaysia being Malaysia thing where they screwed up what was supposed to be a simple process of getting those tags issued in Malaysia, having them put in the mail and then sent over to the Singaporean drivers who had applied for them. Sounds simple enough, but there were people who applied back in May, July, who only received these tags as late as August or September. Some of them have not even received those tags at all. So the result of this is not every vehicle is going to be able to enter if they were to enforce this mandate starting the 1st of October because they don't have everyone's application in. That's the first thing. Not everyone applied for the VEP to begin with. And for those people who did apply, a lot of people didn't receive their tags anyway, even after a few months. Now, there isn't a number that the Malaysian authorities have publicly disclosed that I know of that says how many vehicles in Singapore applied for the VEP and how many vehicles actually received the VEP tag. But my ballpark is probably about 30 to 60% of cars from Singapore who travel into Malaysia have applied for this at all. This is just ground sentiment from asking a lot of people who have not even applied and are just sitting on it waiting for the U-turn, which Malaysia's authorities actually said a couple months ago that there is no U-turn. We are going to enforce the VEP starting 1st of October. Now guess what happened? People didn't comply. They didn't consciously not comply, but it's a series of screw-ups on the Malaysian side combined with the fact that there is a number of Singaporeans who do know how Malaysia's system works, and they were counting on those screw-ups to cause a delay in the enforcement date. Because there weren't enough people who were able to get these tags or even apply for these tags, they were going to get a drastic reduction in number of Singaporean vehicles coming into Malaysia. And that's a bad thing because there is a city across the border in Malaysia called JB, which a lot of Singaporeans go to for their weekly shopping, their gas, their errands. So there's a lot of Singaporean money that is being spent in Malaysia every single week. If they were to ban so many cars from entering the country because they lack this little tracking sticker to cross the border, their economic activities would drop into a pit in the ocean. And that's exactly what happened when they closed the borders back in 2020 into 2021 into 2022. Singaporeans weren't allowed to go into Malaysia back then, and as a result, a lot of those businesses in JB and even across Malaysia in general had to shutter permanently because they were losing their core customers who were spending a shitload of money with them. So in a very indirect manner over here, people voted with their wallets. They didn't intend to vote with their wallets. In fact, there's a lot of Singaporeans whom I do come across who are like, well, we're going to have to do it anyway, so we might as well apply for the VEP. Or as they call it in local language, Lan Lan Go VEP. Lan Lan means, well, I'm reluctant to do it, but I'm going to do it anyway. Because I guess everyone's going to do it, and so should I, even if I disagree and I don't like it. That's the problem right there. You're told to do it, and you think that you should do it. The law says that you need to do it, but you don't think it's right. But you do it anyway because you don't agree with all of these policies, but everyone else is going to do it. But guess what? When everyone starts sharing that thinking, I'm not going to do it, but everyone else is going to do it, so I might as well do it. Everyone else ends up doing it. However, if you stood your ground and you said, well, I'm not going to do it, but everyone else might do it, but I'm going to stick it to those people that I disagree with and not do it anyway, and everyone else has that same line of thinking, guess what's going to happen? You're going to have a ton of people who are collectively thinking the same thing. I'm not going to do it because I disagree with it. And I don't care if everyone else is doing it. I'm not going to do it. You're going to get the numbers to push back. The inverse is when everyone thinks, I'm not going to do it, but everyone else is going to do it, so I'm going to do it anyway. Everyone else thinks the same thing. You have a whole bunch of people who disagree with whatever it is that they're told to do, but they do it anyway because they think everyone else around them is going to do it. And this is exactly what we saw in 2021 and 2022 with the forced medicine. Singapore has literally a 99% compliance rate with the medicine for that reason. There were a lot of people that I know who are Singaporeans in Singapore who didn't want to get the medicine, but they had this mentality that everyone else was going to do it. Everyone else was going to comply. So I don't want to really take it because it's irreversible. It might cause damage. That damage might affect my core organs of my body, but everyone's doing it anyway, so I'm gonna have to do it as well. I'm useless as one person. A lot of people thought the same thing. So guess what all those people did? They thought everyone else was gonna do it, so they went ahead and did it. And that's how you get a 99% compliance rate with an irreversible medical procedure to your body because you disagreed with it, but you thought everyone else would go along with it. And that's exactly what happened. It became a self-fulfilling prophecy. Imagine a situation where 1 out of 5 people, or even 1 out of 10 people, 10%, just said, I'm not going to do it because I'm afraid. I don't want to see what happens to my organs if I were to go for this medicine. I don't care if I'm not allowed in malls. I don't care if I get fired from my job. Imagine if even 10% of people had that same train of thought and they just stood their ground right there. Are they going to fire 10% of the population from their jobs? Are they going to allow 10% of the entire population not to enter malls, not to spend their money, not to go into restaurants to eat? Think about it. It's like that one episode in Squid Game with the tug of war scene where they have all these strong gangster looking guys on one team and they have like a mix of men, old men, and women on the other team, but they manage to win anyway because the old guy is like, you gotta stand your ground. Everyone just has to hold their ground and tough it out as they get pulled towards the pit in the middle. And once the other team thinks that they're winning, they gotta pull together. They gotta pull at the same time because that teamwork, that numbers game is gonna help you out even though you might be objectively weaker than the other side. This is exactly how it is in other countries. And again, we're going back to that other lesson that I mentioned back in the Lewis Rossman reply video, which is you gotta pay attention to what's happening outside of your country. America had a 60% compliance rate with the medicine for a reason. Florida State was open the entire time from May 2020 into 2021 and 2022 with barely anyone dying, and they were just out jet skiing in the ocean without any masks because they fought back. People in Germany with the same draconian mandates that Singapore and Malaysia had back in 2021, 2022, had something stupid like a 70 or 80% compliance rate. That's still not as low as 60%, but that's a whole 1 in 5 in the population who said, I'm not going to do it because I don't agree with it for whatever reason that is. You could be wrong, you could be right. It's a personal choice. And if you disagree with a shitty policy like having a stupid ass tag on your vehicle, why would you go ahead and say, I'm just gonna do it? This is what I mean by the importance of having a spine. It doesn't matter what your friends say. It doesn't matter what your family says. What does your brain say? What is your brain telling you? And if your brain is telling you something that contradicts what everyone else around you says, that's fine. You're entitled to your personal opinion. You're entitled to whatever decisions that you make. There might be consequences for that, and you might have to suffer in the short term. But guess what? If you don't agree with that, if you say that's unfair, it's a shitty policy, it's a money grab just by having people to pay for a little tag, and you don't agree with it, you might have to suffer for a short while. But if you had enough people collectively stand their ground like that, you might have that whole policy reversed. It's like what we saw in 2021. If we didn't have countries like America or the UK or Germany with people who love to stand their ground, regardless of the amount of suffering that they have to go through, just to stand up for whatever they believe in, we would still be wearing masks and scanning our QR codes to enter shopping malls and stores and restaurants in 2024 today. As I said in the beginning of this video, it's not just about the VEP, but it's about the bigger attitude, the mindset, and the behavior of people who need to grow a spine and stand up for themselves instead of having this whole negative attitude of, I'm just one person, what change can I make in the world as one person? And just in case it isn't clear enough by now, what you're supposed to do if you don't agree with the VEP and you don't want it ever enforced or mandated ever, just don't apply. Don't fucking get it. If you're one of those people who doesn't want it implemented ever, why the fuck are you going to apply for it? Just because Lan go VEP? Just because you think everyone else around you is gonna get it? You're not alone. Ask everyone. Ask your friends. Ask your family. There's a shit ton of people who don't want to get it. Guess how you're gonna get out of that? By working together. By standing together. Not moving like those guys in the tug of war in Squid Game. You know how you're gonna get them to implement it and mandate it and force it onto you? By complying. You cannot comply your way out of tyranny in any shape or form. I'm not telling you what to do or what to think over here, but if you are on that camp where you disagree with this policy, what are you doing by doing the opposite of what you actually feel? Don't be a fucking coward. That's it for today. I hope you learned something. Leave a comment down in the comment section below this video. I know this is a controversial topic which some people might not agree with. I would love to hear your thoughts, whether you're for or against this topic, or if you're just hating, that's cool as well. See y'all in the next one. Goodbye.